Greetings. In one of my previous videos, I told you about Rome's struggle against the Gauls and mentioned the Roman commander Marcus Furius Camillus. This video is devoted to one of the episodes from the life of this great man, which took place during the siege of the Etruscan city of Falerii in 394 BC. When Rome was at war with the tribe of the Falerii. The Roman army, under the command of Marcus Furius Camillus, surrounded the city of Falerii, located in southern Etruria to the northeast of Rome. The city was well fortified, and taking it by storm was impossible. Therefore, Camillus began a methodical siege, relying on the fortifications that encircled the city in an unbroken ring. The people of Falerii paid little heed to the siege. Apart from those keeping watch on the walls, everyone still wore togas and went about their daily affairs. Livy wrote that among the Falerii there was a custom to entrust the education and upbringing of children to the same person, with many children placed in the care of one tutor at the same time, as was common in Greece. The children of the most noble citizens were taught by the man considered the most knowledgeable. And so, as in peacetime, this teacher continued to lead the children beyond the city walls, and after lessons he would bring them back. The Romans watched from a distance and did not interfere. Day by day, the school children's walks extended farther, and finally the teacher appeared with the children right in front of the Roman camp. Camillus came out to meet them. The children looked in fear at the Roman soldiers surrounding them. Bowing low, the teacher said, "Commander, before you are the children of the most noble families of the city. If you wish to take Falerii, threaten to execute them or sell them into slavery, and their fathers themselves will open the gates to you." To Camillus, this deed seemed monstrous. Having heard the teacher, he said, addressing all present, that war, of course, is a joyless business associated with many injustices and acts of violence. But for decent people, there are certain laws, even in war. And no matter how desirable victory may be, no one should seek advantages whose source lies in crime and dishonor. A great commander ought to act relying on his own courage, not on another's treachery. And with these words he ordered the lictors to strip the scoundrel of his clothing, and tie his hands behind his back, and gave the children rods and whips, so that they might lash the traitor, driving him back into the city. As soon as the people of Falerii learned of the teacher's betrayal, the whole city was filled with weeping. Men and women alike, losing their composure, rushed to the walls and gates. Then the children appeared, driving the naked and bound teacher in disgrace, calling Camillus their Savior, Father, and God. Not only the children's parents, but all other citizens who saw this were filled with admiration and deep affection for the Roman commander's sense of justice. Hastily convening a public assembly, they sent envoys to Camillus with an offer of surrender, and he sent them on to Rome. Admitted to the Senate, they are said, according to tradition, to have spoken as follows: "Fathers of the Senate, you and your commander have won over us such a victory as cannot arouse indignation, either in the gods or in men, and we surrender to you, believing that it is better for us to live under your authority and under the protection of your laws. For the victor, nothing is more splendid than such a conviction in the defeated. We are at your disposal. Send men to receive from us our weapons, hostages, and the city. The gates are open, and you will always be satisfied with our loyalty, as we shall be with your supreme authority." And Falerii passed under the authority of Rome. In conclusion, I would like to comment on this gracious story. I think that the inhabitants of Falerii were guided not only by a feeling of admiration for the nobility of Camillus, but also by other, far more practical considerations. I believe they were perfectly aware that the only possible outcome of the siege could be the capture of Falerii. There could simply be no other options. They had before their eyes the very recent siege of another Etruscan city, Veii, which lasted from 406 to 396 BC. However strong that city's fortifications were, the Romans, having spent 10 years, nevertheless took it. Veii was thoroughly plundered, and a huge indemnity was imposed upon it. Thanks to the noble act of Camillus, there arose the possibility of surrendering in the most favorable circumstances. They surrendered out of admiration for Rome, and not because they were cowards, and in doing so they saved the city from plunder from a large indemnity, and at the same time became a positive example in the state mythology of Rome. That there was a threat of great bloodshed in the event of continued resistance is evidenced at least by the fact that the soldiers, who had expected to plunder Falerii upon returning to Rome, began accusing Camillus of hatred toward the people, saying that he was preventing the poor from improving their lot. In the end, the ill-wishers of Camillus brought the matter to trial. By the verdict, he was to pay a rather considerable fine, and he withdrew into voluntary exile. As for the people of Falerii, they turned out to be right. There was no plunder, and the tribute was simply laughable. The inhabitants of Falerii were only obliged to reimburse the expenses of the Roman army incurred during the campaign in the siege of Falerii itself.